They will be providing the translation. So let us begin with our conference. The title is, well, it's about the Israeli-Palestinian issue or situation, which, as you know, is of great interest for the Fondazione Basso. It has always taken an interest in it ever since it was founded. And today, if we look at what is happening, this issue, together with the tragedy of the war in Syria, it is more than ever before the most tragically emblematic situation of the crisis of international law and of its institutions. And with the United Nations, first and foremost. And this crisis has been made increasingly alarming because of the unilateral approach taken by the President of the US, Mr. Trump, and by the Israeli government. They continue to ignore human rights and international law, and they go on ignoring the tens of resolutions that have been adopted since 1967 by the General Assembly and the Security Council of the United Nations. And not only did they abstain, but the United States expressed their support in favor of certain measures. And next, on the 14th of March, will be the 70th year that marks the 70th year of Israel, the State of Israel. Well, the U.S. Embassy ignores most of the resolutions of the United Nations that go against the resolutions of the holy town of Jerusalem, something that, well, on the 15th is another tragic anniversary for the Palestinians who, and this has been pre-announced, they will be holding a demonstration in Jerusalem. So what we would like to highlight is what European governments should do. The Italian government, the EU Commission, for instance. The EU appears to be incapable of intervening in order to alleviate the suffering of the people living in the occupied territories, and also it appears to be incapable of adopting some sort of initiative that may curb the economic aid to Israel in order to bring them to make them aware that they should be complying with human rights. So there's an interesting resolution that was approved in March 2017, consistently with what was stated in Resolution 2334 of 2016 of the UN Security Council. Well, it states that Israel's new settlements in Palestinian territory, which started back in 1967, including also eastern Jerusalem, all of this is deprived of any legal foundation, and it is an open violation of international law. The resolution condemns the continuation of this policy of new settlements being set up all the time, and it condemns the decision to start new settlements and tenders for the construction of 2,000 homes, and of declaring other areas of the Gaza Strip as being state territory. And they will be demolishing houses that were built with the funds from the EU. And this will lead to the displacement, the forced displacement of Palestinian families and confiscation of their property. Well, the resolution approved on the 19th of April 2018 has to do with the Gaza Strip. This resolution states that if we consider the data of the United Nations, according to these data, 1.3 million people in the Gaza Strip need humanitarian assistance. 47% of these families suffer from lack of food, either severe or moderate severe food, and 97% don't have drinking water or water that is suited for human consumption, and 80% don't have the energy needs that they have, and more than 40% of the people are out of a job, have no jobs. And Israeli Defense Forces have often fired on demonstrators using active bullets. And on the 30th of March, on the 6th and 13th of April 2018, 30 Palestinians were killed and more than 2,000 people were injured, amongst whom many children and women. Now, these resolutions are rather important from the political, at the political level and in terms of principles. But it seems that they seem to be ambivalent and even ambiguous because they are affected by that choice of wanting to keep the two sides to the conflict on the same level. And they do, however, they do not change the tragic reality that instead could be influenced if political and economic action or concrete political and economic action were to be taken by the European Union. Of course, we do not ignore or overlook the need to stop all forms of violence by all sides, even by the Palestinians, because causing death and damage, albeit to a much smaller number of victims by the Palestinians, and even the loss of one human life is unacceptable. And from this standpoint, we launch our strong appeal also to the Palestinians. However, it is self-evident that there is an evident skewedness, there is an imbalance of forces, there is a disproportionate amount of violence that is being exercised. And it is decades now that there is a situation of occupation that is encroaching on the Palestinian territory. Well, all this openly and blatantly ignores the rights or law and the rights of individuals and peoples. It ignores the declarations of the United Nations, but no international action is taken to stop this state of affairs. Now, the Fondazione Basso and the Asso Pace Palestina, together with the Casa della Pace, the House of Peace, have listened to these calls for peace, and therefore we are taking a political and cultural initiative. Now, we do not want to restrict ourselves only to crying out against the violation of the people's rights and the rights of the Arab citizens by the Israeli government. And so we have embarked on this program with 3 conferences, a series of 3 conferences, and today is the first one, which are brought about thanks to the contribution of the municipal administration of Monterotondo and the hospitality of Casa della Pace, the House of Peace, Angelo Fermentino. And so we will be having another meeting at the end of June and the third after the summer in September or October. The aim is that of gathering first-hand information, as you have seen from the program, where we see 4 Israeli citizens, of whom one is an Arab, and they will be interacting with Italian scholars. They will be providing information about the politics of the State of Israel with regard to the evolution or involution of the rule of law, and with regard to the cultural and social changes that are occurring in the Israeli society, with reference also to the way the minorities are treated. The second meeting will pursue the same goals, but it will be focusing on the Palestinian society. And it is on the basis of these meetings, on the basis of the information that we will be gathering, it is on the basis of this that we will give voice to the aspects of the political instability and the problems caused by the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and that this situation may generate new conflicts. And on the other hand, we want to contribute to raising the awareness of public opinion with regard to the absolute need for the European Union to take an initiative, and obviously also the Italian government, initiative in order to put an end to the international violations, the violations of human rights and of international law, so that the Union, the EU, may become a major player in the building up of peace and in ensuring that rights be complied with. So we as Democrats are worried because the persistence of this situation may, even in Israel, cause a process of change in the Israeli state, the state that proudly defined itself as being the sole democracy in the Mediterranean, and that today instead is characterized by theocratic tendencies and by being against the ethnic minorities, and all this would undermine the rule of law and the equal dignity of peoples and individuals without distinction, without religious, gender, opinion distinctions, or social standing, and so on. So this is a concern that derives from the facts that are occurring, and also as a result of our history. We are the heirs of Lelio Basso, who in the Italian Constituent Assembly was responsible for Article 3, and in particular the formulation of the principle on equality that is the basis for substantial equality, and he was also one of the promoters of the proclamation of the Charter of Human Rights in Algiers back in 1976. So there's also an open letter that was recently signed by 32 leading personalities of the Jewish world, first and foremost Bruno Segre, who takes a stance which is the direct opposite of anti-Semitism, which is claimed in order to reject any criticism made against the Israeli state. But our initiative, just like the initiative of the 32 signatories of that open letter, are the result of respect for history and the desire to reinstate the legality of international law and the rights and respecting the rights of every human being. And this is how we're beginning this conference. At this point, I would pass the floor, in accordance with our program, I would pass the floor to Avram Berg, who, for those of you who are well acquainted with these issues, well, he doesn't need to be introduced. He is well known to you all. He is the author of the famous book, which was a major success also in Italy, a publishing exec, on killing Hitler, and he was the former president of the European Parliament. Speaker of the Knesset, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Well, that's an expression of hope. So he was the Speaker of the Knesset. And so we wanted him to be the first amongst our very famous invitees to take the floor first and speak to us about the situation.